Hey there, everyone. I'm Amber Yang for Peers and wanttoknow.info, and here we are at Contact in the Desert, the world's leading UFO conference, exploring the leading edges of conversation on fascinating topics: extraterrestrial life, non-human intelligence, nature, reality, and consciousness, secret government programs, and otherworldly technologies and crafts that the US government is in possession of, and that these topics have been repressed by authority voices in the media and government. And this conference explores why and what we're doing right now to educate the public. So here we are with Danny Sheehan, a Harvard-trained civil rights lawyer and now a leading UFO advocate and educator who's spent his whole career exposing major government crimes and representing the rights of people from all sides of the political spectrum for the greater good of humanity and society. So thank you so much, Danny, for being with me today.
Terrific, Amber. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's my first time here at the conference.
Yeah.
So let's start off with the first question. Given the topics that are being discussed here at the conference, why do you think it's important for the everyday person to know about these issues?
Well, I think that if in fact, as there appears to definitely be, a complete extraterrestrial civilization of highly intelligent and highly technologically developed species other than human beings in our galaxy, and they're actually traveling here to our planet, coming and going, and some element of our United States government knows this and has known this for some time, and are engaged in some type of a program of trying to obtain access to one or more of their craft and to back engineer that technology as a weapons system so that the United States government can use it to assert dominion over our planet. The people in a democracy ought to know about that, and be able to stop them from doing that. This is a terrible thing to be doing on our planet, and that we should instead be looking toward establishing a positive and mutually productive relationship with these members of an extraterrestrial civilization, rather than trying to knock down their aircraft out of the sky and back engineer them to make weapons. So that's I think a perfectly clear reason why our people should know about this.
And I actually was attending the morning panel today, where it was discussed just the risks to the petrodollar and the whole field of the intellectual property rights of some of these technologies, that these are possible reasons why this information would want to be kept secret, right?
Well, the information wouldn't want to be kept secret, but the people would want to keep it secret. The people from the aerospace industry who want to get private title to some of this technology so that they can patent it, and get what they call intellectual property rights so that they would have to, they would get paid to allow our United States government to utilize any of the technology for the benefit of the human family. And that's a terrible idea. But since they have the relationships that they do have at the present time with our military-industrial complex, they believe that they have an opportunity, if they can keep this secret, that they can get property rights in this, and that's what they're negotiating right now. And we're trying to keep that from happening. We're trying to have whatever the technological benefits are of knowing about the technology of this other civilization. We want that to be for the benefit of all humankind. And we don't want it used for weapons. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, well said. Yeah, and speaking of the efforts that you're discussing right now, I know that there's a bill that was passed through the Senate Intelligence Committee, is that right?
Yes.
With what you suggest is 7 key aspects in terms of why this is so important that there's this legislature now being passed through. Could you say more about that?
Yes, there are 7 extraordinarily important things that this piece of legislation does. And it was sponsored by Chuck Schumer, who is the majority leader of the Senate, and it's co-sponsored by Marco Rubio, who's a very conservative Republican from Florida, who, if the Republicans are in charge of the Senate, then he's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. but we also have the support of Mark Warner, who's the Democrat from Virginia, who is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. We have the support of the 100 senators. We have the support of about 97 of those senators
Wow.
for this bill. And over on the House side, which is controlled by the Republican Party, out of the 435 members that are there, probably 430 of them are all in favor of this bill. And what this bill does is, number one, it commands all 6 of our U.S. military services. That's the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and Coast Guard, and now the Space Force, et cetera. All of them, as well as all 18 of our intelligence agencies, not just the Central Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency and the National Security Agency, but there's 18 different
Yeah.
intelligence agencies, commands all of them, and all 42 of the United States Defense Department agencies. And the bill passed by the Senate includes all the private aerospace corporations, who are in possession of any information about the UFOs and about the existence of any extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence that's responsible for this UFO phenomenon. It commands them to turn all this information over to the National Archives and, in effect, to our college, our Congress. Okay, that's number one. And that bill, that part of the bill has been passed now by the House as well and signed into law by President Biden. And that's underway right now. That they've been commanded to have all of that information that goes all the way back to January 1st of 1945 has to be completely gathered together. Every single telephone call, every single memo that's been written, every single telegram, cablegram, every piece of information of any form has to be turned over to the National Archives and made available now for the Congress intelligence committees to analyze. Okay, and they've been given 300 days from the passage of that statute, which was December 22nd of 2023. So that comes due on October 18th of this year of 2024, and they've been commanded to turn this information over to the National Archives as soon as possible.
Wow.
After that date. So people aren't aware of that. This is an extraordinarily important thing. Now, that Senate bill also proposed setting up an independent board that would be appointed by the president to have them review this information. And every single piece of information that's 25 years old or more would have to be released immediately after October 18th, pursuant to the bill.
Wow.
This has been passed. Unless the president himself, which at that point will still be President Biden, unless he personally orders it to be postponed temporarily. And he has to give a specific set of reasons why he thinks that that's necessary for the national security. Okay? Now, that's the law that's in place right now. But there's an additional element of it that the independent panel part was not approved by the House. Okay, so that the United States Senate is now drafting a second bill to put back in the demand that there be an independent panel to review all the rest of the information, all the information since basically 2000 up to 2025. This 25 years of information. All of that information would have to go to this independent panel, and that panel would be authorized by, according to the Senate law, that they would be the ones that would determine how much of that information would be released immediately to the public. Okay, and any of the rest of the information that was postponed for any reason, they would have to review this, and the panel would be able to make the decision about what portion of that information could be released right away too. So this is what's going on right now, and the news media are not really covering this right yet, because the implications of this are so profound, and they're not sure whether or not this is going to get that part's going to get passed this year. But we're still dealing with 25 years of information that go all the way from basically 2000 all the way back to 1945. All of that information right now is under congressional command to be turned over and released to the public by as soon as possible after October 18th of this year. And so that's underway right now, and that's what we've been talking about now. And so that's another thing. Your question is why? What are the statutes saying that we think are important? That's important
Right.
for the people to know that that's going on. And but thirdly, there's a controlled disclosure plan involved in the Senate bill. The Senate bill, in addition to appointing this panel, that panel would also be proposing a UFO controlled disclosure campaign plan for the president to implement, to roll out all of this information over it's about a 7-year period. So that this is the moment everybody's been anticipating in like science fiction movies. Here it is that not only are they acknowledging in the Senate bill that the UAPs or UFOs are real, but that the United States government is hiding information about it.
Right.
And they've made that finding, and that they're commanding them to turn it over now and to make it public. And so this is one of the reasons there's so much excitement at this conference this year, because this is a demand that a substantial number of citizens have been making for the last 50 years at least, but actually a little longer than that. I've been at this for 47 years, from when I first encountered this after President Carter was elected. President Carter had seen a UFO when he was governor of Georgia. And so one of the very first things he did when he was elected president, before he was even officially inaugurated, called in the head of the Central Intelligence Agency and demanded to be briefed up on the UFO phenomenon and what relationship it had to extraterrestrial intelligence. So this has been going on now for some 47 years. I've happened to have been involved in it to some significant extent. And I now am the head of the New Paradigm Institute, which is in Washington, D.C., which is the citizens group. It's kind of the citizen watchdog group to oversee this process.
Great.
And to make sure that the American public is kept up to date on all the details of what's going on, and the things that they need to responsibly demand that their congressmen and women and their senators do to make sure this information is shared with the public. So those are the important aspects of this legislation that we think is important for our people to know.
That's very exciting. Yeah, I'm hearing just the buzz and the energy in the room of how unprecedented this is after all the years of advocating for this. And I think Steve Bassett said in the panel this morning that it's like this is really turning into a real activist movement.
That's right.
So it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Now, I know we talked about this at the workshop, and I'm just thinking to myself, the whole idea of files being released to the public is really exciting because who knows what we'll learn. Yet we've learned with the MK Ultra files, for example, that when that was ordered to be released, most of those files got destroyed by Richard Helms, right? So do you think there's going to be any differences to that information will be released, or will it be another situation like that, since we know that UFOs are one of the most classified subjects in the US government, and there's a lot at stake in terms of what would be revealed and what it would mean for society and how the public even views the government, right?
Well, we're working with the Senate Intelligence Committee right now and the Senate Armed Services Committee to put into law criminal penalties if anybody takes steps to try to destroy or alter any of that information that they have on record right now. And the statute has been drafted by the Senate that had that provision in it. Well, they had a legal cause of action to be taken against anybody who engages in that activity. Okay, and we're going to get that reinstated. So we believe that by October 18th, when the time comes for them to have to release this information, that we hopefully are going to have in place another statute that will make it a criminal offense to withhold any of this information. And that'll have real teeth in it.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's exciting. And just even going further down the rabbit hole when it comes to how information gets suppressed, I was reading in a book by Whitney Webb about the role that blackmail plays with compromising politicians and people in power. And she even suggested that most of the people on the Senate Intelligence Committee are all compromised. So, what do you think the role of blackmail is in keeping information suppressed and compromising our leaders so that most of this truth or the real truth may not come out? Do you think that plays a
Well, it's
part?
it's interesting. This has been a fundamental problem for decades. You know that J. Edgar Hoover, when J. Edgar Hoover was the head of the FBI, he was spying on members of Congress. You know, having people follow them around, wiretap their telephones, bug their homes and offices, trying to get information that he could use to blackmail them. The Central Intelligence Agency's Operations Directorate has been working with people in the United States military to utilize the skills that they've been taught to engage in espionage outside of the country. They've turned those tools against our own elected representatives to try to monitor their activities and blackmail them. In fact, when our office did the Iran-Contra civil prosecution under the Federal Criminal Racketeering Act against the off-the-shelf enterprise that was smuggling weapons to the Contras in violation of the congressional ban, and smuggling cocaine into the United States
Right.
to sell it here and use the money to buy more weapons to be shipped illegally. We were able to show at that time that part of what they were doing is trying to blackmail members of the House and Senate to keep them from doing anything about that. And we actually had the Bishop White, who is the chief bishop in the United Methodist Church in the United States, went to talk to his congressman about why didn't they do more about this. And the congressman told him directly, well, there's just not enough men up here on the Hill who are in Congress whose personal closets are clean enough to dare to take on these particular people. And what that means is these particular people are people, for example, in the Operations Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency that has been authorized for decades under the 5412 Committee of the National Council, the National Security Council, to engage in those kind of activities abroad against foreign leaders and members of legislatures in other foreign countries to try to promulgate the purported national interests of the United States. That's been a horrible policy because you know that if they're authorized to do it abroad, if push comes to pull, they'll turn and use that against our own elected representatives.
Yeah, like Tim Burchett, right, coming out last month or a few months ago saying that his fellow Congress members were being compromised and it wasn't by foreign powers. He was like, it's could be from our own government.
Well, you know, in the the Justice Department should investigate that, you know, except they're afraid
Yeah.
of the national security state people because the national security state people have been authorized under certain circumstances to use lethal force to protect national security information. And they are interpreting that to allow them to use lethal force against United States citizens. Okay, and so people are afraid of that. So we need to, while we're trying to get all of this information out about the history of the UFO programs in our government and what they know and whether they've captured any of these craft and are trying to back engineer them, we want to at the same time try to reform some of these major flaws in our United States government that have enabled them to keep this information secret for 80 years, yeah, such as these kind of threats and these kind of use of blackmail. So we should try to utilize the opportunity that we have here because we have a support across the political spectrum to get this information out from the most conservative of the people in the House of Representatives, Tim Burchett, Congresswoman Luna, we've got Matt Gaetz, people in what they call the Freedom Caucus, those 8 or so people that are causing so much trouble for the Speaker of the House, you know, all the way to the most liberal, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others are all in unison
Yeah.
in wanting this information made available. So hopefully, if untoward steps are being taken to suppress the continued information flow on here, that they will join together to take a focus on this problem, this additional problem of the utilization of covert operations by our intelligence community directed against our own legislators. So if that comes up in this case, more than just kind of randomly asserting it, to investigate it, improve specific cases of it, and then get the additional kind of reforms that we need in our government. So this whole thing presents an extraordinary opportunity to enter into an entire kind of new era of transparency and clarity about what's going on in our government, the remedying of some of the excesses of the national security state infrastructure that we have.
Yeah.
And so all of those things are part of the New Paradigm Institute
Right.
in Washington, D.C., which I happen to head up. And we're going to be working on that. And we are having these conversations with members of the House and Senate to protect themselves against these excesses of the national security state, not only in refusing to give them information, but actively lying to them and threatening them.
Right.
So that these things all have to be remedied in the context of getting this information out to our people.
Wow. You're on the front lines and in the trenches, so that's really powerful. And I firmly believe that more people would be speaking up about this if people knew what to trust. You know, there's like Edgar Mitchell, I said this in the workshop, and Edgar Mitchell, one of my favorite quotes about him in regards to the UFO, the sixth man to walk on the moon, is that he once said that he's convinced that there's a small body of UFO information that's totally valid and a large body of information about UFOs that's total disinformation to distract and divide the people. So what do we trust? And I think a lot of people, a lot of my friends who don't really know much about these issues, just don't really know where to look. So could you speak on the role of the media and how open dialogue gets manipulated by these special interests? I believe it was former Air Force Special Investigations Officer Richard Doty who once admitted that he was feeding credible ufologists lies and half-truths to infiltrate and divide the community, right?
Officially, he was actually authorized to do that
Right.
by the OSI, the Office of Special Investigations for the United States Air Force. Our citizens ourselves have to undertake to find this information out. One of the problems is that people kind of sit back and wait for someone else to tell them, you know, and they don't take any active action to research this themselves and do the investigation. That's another one of the roles of the New Paradigm Institute. The New Paradigm Institute, we're putting together a list of 100 facts with footnotes on all of them to verify what's going on here, so that people can have a place to go to. You know, and that Richard Dolan is a very well-known and respected historian in this area. He's working with us to help put together the data to support these 100 facts, so that people can have a place to go to begin with, to get kind of a primer on the history and what the facts are that have already been sort of dispositively established. That's what we're going to be doing. And we're trying to get people in the major mainstream media to report this. We've had some limited success with the New York Times and 60 Minutes, a little bit so far. But the bottom line is every one of the mainstream media have national security reporters on their staff, and virtually all of them come from the national security estate. They're CIA people, they're NSA people, they're DIA people, and they're in there, and that they give them access to inside information all the time, which the news media conceal with them from the people, but it gives them the ability to kind of have a little better idea what's going on in the world, but that they're in on it and they're monitoring some of these things that are going on. Okay, and so that conditions what it is the media may be willing to tell us. Now, I know that because I was one of the legal counsel for the New York Times in the Pentagon Papers case back in 1971. I was the one who actually got the call from Jim Goodell, you know, the general counsel for the New York Times, to let us know that they had the papers and have our firm represent them. So I've been in the middle of all of that. So I know that for example, we got an affidavit from Teddy Sorensen, who was actually briefing the board of editors of the New York Times on national security information, so that the New York Times would not accidentally stumble over some covert operation and publish some story that compromised them. That's how they perceived it. But we know that was going on. We provided an affidavit from Teddy Sorensen to Judge Murray Gerfine, who was the sitting judge in the Pentagon Papers case, to show them that the New York Times was, quote, responsible in its decisions as to what to publish and what not to publish,
Right.
but that there was no authority in the government to prohibit them from publishing anything. So I'm deeply familiar with this process and the existence of this kind of symbiotic relationship between the national and mainstream news media in the national security state.
That Operation Mockingbird never fully ended.
No, that's right. No,
Yeah.
we established during the Church Committee, the Senate and House Select Committee on Intelligence Abuse, that there were 42 full-time national security officers that were embedded in the major news media that were doing this operation of silencing them with regard to certain national security information. But even all of that having been said, we succeeded in getting the 47 volumes of the Pentagon Papers exposed. We've done other things. We've gotten information revealed about the off-the-shelf enterprise that the former director of covert operations of the CIA was running. It wasn't Oliver North that put together that group or ran them. It was a man by the name of Theodore Shackley, who was the hand-picked head of covert operations worldwide for the CIA under George Bush Sr. That's who was running that whole operation. So we've gotten that information exposed, and we can do the same thing here. If the citizens will mobilize and work together through the New Paradigm Institute, and we're trying to bring together all of the UFO community together to cooperate together. All of the whistleblowers, we have attorneys, we have a dozen attorneys who are going to be representing whistleblowers to protect them against retaliation. We're also, at the request of the House of Representatives, we are working to draft new strengthened legislation to protect whistleblowers against any retaliation for them conveying this information to Congress. So that we're at the center of this at the New Paradigm Institute. And we've got a long track record of working on cases like this through the Romero Institute and our Christic Institute. That we've now set up this New Paradigm Institute to do the same thing, specifically directed to the field of UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence. And that's the go-to place. That's the answer to the question is where can people go? They just go to newparadigminstitute.org. And you can get the information with all the footnotes and the corroborating evidence of it, and you can become part of the Citizens for Disclosure. You can contact us. All you have to do is give us your name and your zip code, and we'll send you all the information about your congressperson, your senators, what their voting patterns are, how they're supporting us, and how you can support them.
That's great.
And that you can become part of that as Citizens for Disclosure. Just go to newparadigminstitute.org, and you can get all the information. We'll keep people up to date regularly. We put out 2 or 3 newsletters, basically they call them blogs now, every week to keep people informed, up to date on what's going on.
And you also feature media news articles that come out by The Hill or
That's
by
right.
The Debrief, and it's like showing that it is being covered, even if it's not as substantial and common as we'd like. That
That's right.
you're also, because I just spent hours revitalizing our new and updated UFO Information Center, really boiling it down to what's most verifiable and
Yes.
credible. And the New Paradigm Institute was a great resource for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's part of the job that we're performing for the citizens.
That's beautiful. Well, we're wrapping up here. So, something that I'm coming to in this conference is that, we could really get stuck on the deep state aspects and the cover up and the corruption and the darkness behind all of that. Yet, I feel this real inspiration and curiosity about who we are in this larger universe and
Okay.
the implications of extraterrestrial life, our role with communicating with them, and how do we live in a world knowing that we really aren't alone, right? So, what gives you hope and inspiration when it comes to this movement? What keeps you inspired as you fight the good fight, as Richard Dolan says?
Well, I've always, ever since I was probably 7 years old or so, when I first got a chance to, stay out when it started to get dark, and I would sit out in their little yard, like I guess I was in Fort Anne, New York at that time. I would sit in the grass and I would see the stars come out. And as soon as I realized that these were like suns
Yeah.
for other planetary systems, when I really started to realize what this was, it struck me as the conduct that we engage in with each other here on our planet is absurd, is kind of preposterous in light of the kind of larger reality that we're a part of is extremely primitive and parochial. And I think this provides an opportunity for taking the veil off of thinking that we're trapped here on this one planet with just each other, fighting over limited resources, and that each nation state has to try to get privileged access to the natural resources from other countries. And this is an extraordinarily closed-minded, narrow, ignorant, I might say, in the sense of being unknowledgeable about what the real reality is. And so I see this as an extraordinary moment of hope for our human family to lift us out of this kind of sense of scarcity in competition with each other, to not following what President Reagan said in the United Nations, as though he said, I often wonder if, that we could all kind of come together in a unified effort if we found ourselves confronted by a threat from outside of our planet. Well, I think it's just the opposite of that. Given the opportunity to reach out and have a partnership with people in the entire galaxy and find out all kinds of new information that they might know about, that some of these planetary systems have been 1 billion years older than we are. And they've had 1 billion years to explore theological issues, philosophical issues, figure out different geopolitical structures that they may have been able to work out that enable them to live together peacefully and harmoniously and share resources, et cetera. So I see this as an absolutely extraordinary period to overcome the absurd kind of narrow-mindedness that our people have been trapped in, up until now, all through time,
Right.
up until now. Okay. And so it has all kinds of implications for ethics,
Yeah.
which also then leads on to your religious view, to find out about the ultimate nature of reality, which is what religion is all about, trying to figure out what's going on all different dimensions of reality. So this is an absolutely extraordinarily unique time in our history as a human family. And, in the next 7 to 10 years, we're going to be establishing the protocols that are going to govern our relationship with this extraterrestrial civilization for the next 10,000 years.
Wow.
And so people should be extraordinarily excited about being alive at this point in time and being able to actively participate in this and to be part of the 5% of the population of the whole world that live here in the United States that has an opportunity to affect the policies of the dominant world power on our planet at the present time, and to have us have ethical and moral and cooperative policies with the whole rest of the people of our planet is just an extraordinary opportunity that we have a unique capacity to perform here. Okay, and so that's why I want people to to get a hold, to come to newparadigminstitute.org, to sign up and to become part of Citizens for Disclosure, to become fully educated on this, so we can share the information with our friends and neighbors and family. To share this information with people, and then to reach out to have partnerships around the world with other legislatures around the world, which we're doing at the New Paradigm Institute. We have a reach out to other parliaments around the world to do the same thing that our Congress is doing. We're sharing the legislation with them. We're going to be going to meetings. I've been invited to go to Spain.
Wow.
We're here to in Barcelona to meet with their legislatures there. That we're going to be doing all of this. It's totally all transparent. It's all open source.
Yeah.
Of what we're doing, so people can come to newparadigminstitute.org and know exactly what's going on.
Wow. Thanks for making activism feel so meaningful and purposeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for spending time to just share with my readers in the world and my generation the cutting edge of all these issues. And what if we did find technology that could even change how society is run, right? So staying curious with you,
Yeah.
and may it be so that we can really bring about positive and meaningful change. Thank you, Danny.
You're more than welcome. It's a privilege to get to talk with you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.